trying to make sure that we do not spend every dime that's in our budget this year. The fire district makes up 35 square miles, which includes a municipal district covering the city of Southport, which is 3 square miles, a rural district that is in the county's jurisdiction, and then we also contract with the town of Caswell Beach. Southport Fire District has a population of 17,258 people. It's estimated that during the heaviest tourist months, the population swells to over 45,000. Southport Fire Department currently has a roster of 45 volunteers, that is fire and EMS volunteers, 14 full-time staff members on the fire side. Oh, excuse me, that is 17 full-time staff members on the fire side. Responding out of 4 stations with over 5,000 residential and 600 commercial structures for a total of 10.12 million heated square feet that we cover. There are 105 road miles in the fire district, and our current insurance rating is a level 3 ISO rating. Our department is due for an updated ISO inspection this year, October 2025. With the upcoming ISO inspection, we must be very cautious about this year's budget. We do not want to do anything that will jeopardize our insurance rating. I also want to point out several other factors when presenting this budget today. We must take note of several things that have happened in our nation. One, the terrible fires that occurred in Los Angeles, California this year, can be a learning curve for all of us. After listening to several training sessions involving fire officials from that jurisdiction, it's been noted that severe cuts in their budget put the property and the lives of their citizens in danger. Just recently in our own region, there have been many wildfires that we've even been put on standby for. Horry County, South Carolina, Pender County, North Carolina. And we've had a couple of situations in our own county. On top of this, I would be remiss to speak of the tragedies that occurred in western North Carolina during the hurricane season and our own perils from tropical cyclone number 8 in our region, which we were not forecasted to have anywhere near what occurred here last October. However, our fire and EMS were ready to respond. We called folks in, they came, they staffed an emergency operations center and were prepared. The purpose of emergency services is to be prepared for the worst and hope for the best. Preparation for an emergency, it costs funds. The city of Southport is very fortunate to collect the fire fee to assist with the funding of emergency services in our community. For many years, Southport provided emergency services to a rural area outside the city limits with no financial assistance. But today, we collect funds outside the city, which is a huge benefit. We also collect the fire fees from the town of Caswell Beach, which helps us to cover our budget. I know that there has been discussion about the town of Caswell Beach. I want to inform everyone that the town of Caswell Beach has probably an average of 25 calls a year. If we did not contract with the town of Caswell Beach, we would lose $300,000 in funding a year. And we have gotten so many donations from the Caswell Beach community to the tune of a ladder truck for $250,000 that was given to us, $100,000 worth of equipment that was given to us, $1 million worth of surplus money that was given to us. And today I sit here and tell you that we funded our budgets with that. And we did not have deficits during that time that we had that surplus of money that was given to us when we took over Caswell Beach. If we did not have the town of Caswell Beach, we would still have to have the firefighters that are there to cover our rural district. That is the reason why we have 2 firefighters 24 hours a day at Caswell Beach. It's not necessarily to cover the 25 calls that we have at Caswell Beach. But the reason we have those firefighters there in a building that is not costing us one dime, we lease that building at $0. We pay no utilities for that building. That's all in the contract to work with Castle Beach. Additionally, if we did not have that, those two firefighters would have to be staged at our Long Beach Road substation, which would take considerable amount of money because there's no showers there and there's not adequate sleeping facilities there. So it is a benefit for us to contract with the town of Castle Beach.
Chief, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Ballparking. How many calls do the people of the Castle Beach station respond back into the Southwest Fire District?
We have our system set up right down there to where if there's any actual fire, that's a structure fire, car fire, dumpster fire, any type of fire, they respond. They may not go to the call, but what we do is we move trucks. So if our headquarters trucks responds to a call in the Southport, in the city limits of Southport, Castle Beach moves to the Long Beach Road substation, stands by until they're clear. So we have coverage, maximum coverage in our area. So they're moving every time there's a call. But any kind of a major traffic accident or any type of fire or anything to do with the structure, they respond to every single call.
If you don't have the number with you today, could you get us the number? I'm not looking, it's you're 5 off or something like that, but generally, people should know that the people that we're paying for, and the volunteers that are there, respond back into our fire district, I want to say hundreds of times, as opposed to 25 or 30 or whatever it is, Caswell Beach. And so the vast amount of their work is actually done in our fire district.
That is correct.
But if you could help us with those numbers, that would be helpful.
I can do that.
To simplify, they come over the bridge.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. The fire fee is the largest revenue producer for the city of Southport besides the ad valorem taxes. Southport Fire Department is the only city department that produces over $2 million in revenue. The funding mechanism is being studied and looked into. Just last Thursday night, I met with the majority of county fire chiefs at Brunswick Community College, where funding was the main subject that we discussed, and a wealth of knowledge was gained from that meeting. The meeting was so productive that we have since called a special meeting of all fire chiefs in Brunswick County for additional talks on Thursday, May 22nd, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. at Bowling Spring Lakes Fire Department. There will be no county officials there. It will only be Brunswick County fire chiefs that will be discussing funding. I'm actively seeking ways to improve our funding system. We are collaborating with other fire departments outside of our county to look at funding mechanisms. We feel like that it is time for the county fire chiefs to unite together and come up with a plan to present to the county commissioners instead of the county commissioners coming up with a plan to present to us. That is what we're doing, and that is what we're working on. This will help not only relieve funding in the fire service, but it will relieve the city of a huge financial burden. I assured you this morning that as your fire chief, I'm doing my best to do my part to be fiscally responsible and accountable to you as a board and to the citizens of Southport that I serve and to the city that I love and cherish. I've cut this budget to their operating minimum. The budget before you does have a deficit. That is the bad news that I'll present to you today. I want to be a self-sufficient department as I once was. There was a time that Southport Fire Department was a complete self-sufficient department within our own funding. We had completely coverage of funds, and we did not have to ask you for anything that was not the case last year, and it is not the case this year again. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I do believe that the tide is going to turn. Our current staffing is stable. I'm not requesting any additional personnel this year due to the fact that we do not have the revenue to support additional personnel. I'm not requesting any additional vehicles this year. If you take out our debt service payments from this current budget that's before you, it is nearly identical to last year's budget with only some percentage increase due to inflation. My problem with the budget this year is our debt service payments. That is where our problem lies. It's really not our operating expense, but it's our debt service payments. I'm desperately working on the Southport Fire Department debt service, which is the only debt that the city of Southport currently has, totaling $3.2 million. You have no other debt that I know of anywhere with the exception of the $3.2 million that's owed in the fire department. So that covers our current headquarters building, 2 fire engines that we're paying on, and the new heavy rescue vehicle that was ordered last year, and the new ambulance. Our current staffing is 17 full-time employees in the fire department. In administration, we have chief, battalion chief of operations, a clerk, fire marshal, and deputy fire marshal. And on A shift, B shift, and C shift, we have a full-time captain, respectively, with each shift, and 3 full-time firefighters on each shift that cover 24 hours a day. That is where a lot of our overtime expense comes from, is because we have 24-hour shifts. So there is forced overtime every other paycheck on these 24-hour employees. We are, as a city, studying the overtime right now. We are looking at other departments, how they pay their employees. We are looking at our current system that we have with the city of Southport. And we are making sure that we're doing the right thing. We're also checking with the League of Municipalities to make sure that we're paying our firefighters that are working 24-hour shifts correctly. And we're trying to come up with a plan to where we can even out some of the overtime expense.
Other than the fire marshal position, the deputy fire marshal position, has there been any turnover in the other firemen? In other words, there's people left and then you have to hire over here and there's a gap in time.
Yes, there has been.
So have we figured out all the savings that we have between salaries that we budgeted for last year and that money that we did not spend? And we know what that number is, and that go towards next year's fire department budget.
Well, I mean, year to date, you'll see what is actual versus adopted. So we don't have, once we get through the next few months, we'll have a total of what that actually is. So there will be savings throughout each department as there is a return and new people come on board and leave. Certainly that will then go back into the fund balance, which then will be able to be used to cover any deficit as part of the solution.
But we've got a loss this year already.
Now, year to date, revenues are exceeding expenses in the fire department. So as we go through the next 2-3 months, we'll see where those year to date actuals versus appropriated numbers are to then tell us the overall picture. Is our revenue still exceeding expenses, or are we? I mean, as the adopted budget, we will have a deficit in the 25 year. It just all depends on where those revenues and expenses actually lie as we get through the next few months. So I believe we will probably still have a deficit that hasn't been adopted. It's just a matter of, as the mayor's saying, not only personnel expenses, but any other expenses appropriated versus what is actual will give us what will then go into the fund balance or what the general fund will have.
So last year, we had 160,000 or so.
Right.
And just the deputy fire marshal, for years, right? So that salary, right, if I'm following you correctly, whatever we saved on that salary would go towards that 160,000.
Right.
What you're saying?
Right.
Okay. If I would assume you're gonna have more than $160,000 in savings because that's the fire marshal's salary and benefits and all of that stuff. Might cover all of that. Might.
Yeah, it's like the assistant city manager. I mean, we've had, over $100,000 worth of salary and benefits that hasn't been spent in that position year to date. So that there is that's left over in the administrative budget. So that can go to cover any other expenses and then go back to the fund balance is what is actual at the end of the fiscal year. So that's the same with the fire and every other department, depending on where we are at the end of the fiscal year with the determination of where the overall fund balance.
But in the past, we have not seen those kind of figures to show how much money was not spent and budgeted for. We hear the words, it goes back in the general fund, but we don't know from each department, how did that all work out?
I mean, you'll always see in each department's budget, what is adopted year to date, what is adopted, and then what is actual year to date. So going forward, we'll have that. As we get to a manager's proposed budget, we will have a better, the next few months, and then we can project out based on that where we will be at the end of the fiscal year.
Question, and I probably know the answer to this if I'd gone to the fire academy.
You still have time to register for the spring.
I'm scared of that ladder. That's fun.
I'm scared of you driving.
Yeah, so you should be. Unless we want to see you riding down the sidewalk. What does the fire marshal do? And the fire marshal has to be in the district, not just the city, right? And new development is the reason why all the additional work is why we're getting a deputy. I don't know what the fire marshal
We've
does.
had a deputy, but we've advertised 3 times now. So we're on our 3rd round of advertising the interviews. And we've offered the position a couple of times, but they turned it down.
The fire in the unincorporated area of the fire district, doesn't the county fire marshal do that? Our fire marshal only contains itself to within the city limits of Southport.
For code enforcement perspective. So the fire marshal does code enforcement, he does his office does inspections on all commercial buildings. They review plans, they review any new projects that's coming in for the placement of fire hydrants, fire service systems like alarms, hood systems, fire extinguisher placements, all of those things, as well as do our pre-fire plans for our insurance rating. They do that outside of the city as well as inside the city. We have to have that. Then they also do all of our fire prevention programs that we do in the elementary schools, the daycares, all of the senior programs that we do where we teach people about the dangers of fire. They're doing that. And then they also respond to every fire call that we have, and as a backup firefighter, and do interior firefighting. And then they're also certified to respond to medical calls when our ambulance is tied up. So they're responding on medical emergencies as well.
Do they do arson investigations too?
They're in charge of any of our arson investigations and coordinating with the county and bringing in or the state.
Steve, let me ask you a question. The way we're manned, you're gonna have overtime. You gotta have it. That's the only way you can do it.
This part.
Have you done a break-even analysis of where you might break even by bringing in somebody else, bringing in extra bodies to cover for that?
We're very short on part-time employees.
Yeah.
And we're bound by a federal regulation of 1,000 hours. So we don't want to classify all of our volunteers as part-time employees, because when we do that, then we lose that status and we have to start tracking their hours as well. So that makes it a little bit challenging.
One of the problems you have, if you bring in the extra people, you're not only paying their salaries, but you're having to pay for their benefits and banking and all that other stuff. So that make doing a break-even analysis very, very difficult. But the way you're staffed, you're going to have overtime. You can't avoid it. So I don't know if you have a break-even analysis would really do you any good just because of the nature of what you're having to do.
Yes, sir.
Did you say registration is still open?
Yes, it is. Glad to
You
have
could
you.
take it again.
I'm going to, I'm trying to, we'll see.
Our department is committed to more than just running fire calls and medical calls. I proposed at the beginning of last year that our members would be more visible in the community. Customer service is not just something in a retail store, but customer service is important to me as the fire chief. We're here to serve our citizens, and our department is about serving our fellow man. There's hardly any functions that go on in the city of Southport that you will not see prior to the function starting, a fire truck there, whether we're setting up a stage, we're running some equipment to help someone, we're helping with a festival, manning roads, helping police and public works set up barricades, watering flowers for beautification or garden club. We do everything we can do in between calls. We're out in the public. Customer service is our citizens is our top priority. Last year, we started a campaign called Seconds Matter. Our campaign was to push visible address numbers. Our firefighters were out of the headquarters building, going street to street in the city limits of Southport, making sure that every structure had visible numbers on it from the road. I can't even tell you how many note cards and flyers we left on people's doors. We even went to some of the elderly homes and helped them install their numbers on the front of their house when they got them. That is an important commodity in the fire service. This year, our Seconds Matters campaign has been on every structure in our fire district having a working smoke alarm. Since July 2024, we have already installed over 400 smoke alarms, and we've changed over 300 batteries in residential buildings. Our next big push for smoke alarms will be Smoke Alarm Saturday. That's the first Saturday in June. And the majority of these alarms have been through a grant through the Office of the State Fire Marshal. We receive smoke alarms now that have 10-year sealed batteries in them, so the owners do not have to replace the batteries except for every 10 years. The smoke alarm would be replaced.
Is there any statute that requires one to have numbers on the front of their house?
Yes, it's in our city ordinance. It's
I
required.
mean, just a casual drive around town shows you that 30%, being gracious, don't have numbers on the house. I mean, if it's an economic thing, it's one issue, but most of the houses, right, it's not an economic issue.
I mean, we can't make them have it, but I mean, it is an ordinance. I mean, they could be cited. They don't have it.
That would be code enforcement.
Thank you.
Kind of hard to find if you don't have a number on the house.
And the majority of people that we were in contact with going street to street were very accommodating and did put numbers up.
You have numbers on your house.
Last year, we launched our new Citizens Fire Academy. The 2025 spring session of this academy will begin on International Firefighters Day this year, which is Thursday, May 1st, and has proven to be successful in educating the public of the overall fire and EMS operations of the Southport Fire Department. Southport Fire Department responded to 963 fire calls for service, 2,841 medical calls for service,
Could you say that medical number again?
2,841. That is a total of 3,804 calls for service. This is a record number of calls over the last 12 months for service for Southport Fire Department. This budget, the same budget as last year, with the exception of our debt service, increased due to the rescue truck replacement, where we are replacing a 25-year-old vehicle. This vehicle was approved for purchase in last year's budget, and the financing was approved in last year's budget. When the financing of the vehicle was done, it was decided to not put in a payment in this current fiscal year because we were struggling last year, if you remember. Our budget was at a 160 threshold. And so when the financing was done, we did not put in a payment for this fiscal year. This has hurt next fiscal year's budget in the fire service by not putting in that payment, because this year we have to pay a double payment. And that is what's giving me so much heartburn and grief about this budget. This is the reason that I'm facing a bigger deficit this year in the proposed budget than last year. I have made a request for a grant from the state of North Carolina for $1 million. Last year, every fire department in our surrounding area got a $1 million grant from the state, except Southport
Last year.
Did we ask for it?
We asked for money, but we didn't ask for $1 million, but we got the money. We got $90,000 to replace our extrication equipment and our technical rescue equipment, which was done. But every other department in our surrounding communities received $1 million grant. With that being said, I have contacted the state and we have put in for $1 million to get our share of that money. And I've been told that we have a very good chance that we will receive that grant. If,
Why we didn't get anything last year?
but we did get something, but we didn't get that. Yes,
But because we didn't ask for it, we only asked for 90,000. We didn't ask for $1 million.
we didn't ask. Well, we asked for 90,000 and then we asked for, I asked for 600,000 to cover the radio expenses. And we were denied the 600,000 for the radio expenses, but we did get the one, like close to 100,000 to replace for the extrication.
And the $1 million that the other departments got, was it mostly for the payment of new buildings?
$1 million that other departments got was basically for new construction. So if this grant is awarded on the premise of the new rescue vehicle, it will solve the deficit in this fiscal year's budget in the fire department and give us a small surplus of money that I would request that we could roll to the following year fiscal budget to help with the next payment as well. Unless the financing would let us go ahead and put that whole amount down and bring our principal down and help us, that would be fine. I'm also working with Congressman Rouser's office. I have met with a person from his office on 2 occasions. I'm working with Senator Tillis and Senator Budd's office, searching for a grant that would pay off the remainder of our debt service. The federal officials are searching in the Library of Congress for a grant opportunity for emergency services debt relief. If our debt services were canceled and paid off, we could operate on our revenue, and it would free the city of Southport also from $125,000 that you're paying an annual payment on fire headquarters, which would benefit not only the fire department, but it would benefit the city and cause some extra money in your budget to the tune of $125,000 a year if that debt was paid off.
And you're referring to the 3.2 million in total.
That is correct. That is what we're looking for, to try to come up with a debt relief grant to eliminate that debt so that we can operate within our funding. This payment on the heavy rescue truck has hit us hard this year as a double payment.
How much is that?
What's the total of the rescue unit? Is it 450 some thousand?
The heavy rescue for this year,
The
the total is 1.225 million for
The
the,
total to buy the truck, or what is our debt for this year that we're paying?
this year's total debt payment including the $108,000 for the fire station paid by admin, it's $937,000.
So
Say
you
that
you
again.
can't break it out for that
Yeah.
particular vehicle.
No,
I say that nicely, not.
no, so we can, I don't have that figure in front of me.
I think I, give me a second.
Could you say that number again?
937,000
Thank you.
is the total debt payment for the 3.2 million.
That's the total debt payment that we have to pay out of our budget.
I thought, and I don't mention it, 1.5% of the interest.
The interest rate on the building is 1 point something.
And that payment is $250 a year.
250, yes. Fire department pays 125, the city pays
That's not, that's
125.
not right.
Thank
Keep
you.
that debt at home. Somebody's giving us free money. Mr. Mayor, which number were you asking for? I just want to make sure.
So the chief said that he had a double payment this year on the heavy rescue truck.
Correct.
And my question was, for that particular vehicle,
Mhm.
debt payment, that we have to make this year.
This year is $395,000.
So half of that would be the normal one. Okay.
Yes, sir. So next year's payment, for example, is going to be
So the
249,000.
900,000, 300,000 is for that, just for that truck.
Yes.
It's a total of
And you said we're making a double payment.
395,000 just on the heavy rescue truck.
You said we're making a double payment this year.
We're making a payment and a half payment. Yes.
Actually, the payment on the loan we took out was for both the heavy rescue and for the ambulance, but the heavy rescues is almost all of it. It's more than 2/3 of it. The payment for this fiscal year, they owe two payments totaling $549,000.
So the 937,000, 549,000 of that,
It's brand new. And next year, that 549 will go down to 346, because this year, we're making up for not paying, in 26, we're making up for not paying in 25.
so long-term, we have some capital improvement. We understand, like, what I wouldn't want to see is us get $3.2 million and say, ooh, we're debt-free, and then have to replace equipment. So do we and go back into debt? So do we understand what our replacements are over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yes.
Okay.
And if I remember correctly, the next trucks that we have to replace are already in capital improvement plan. And if we do end up going to a countywide fire tax system, then I would ask that a certain amount of that tax would be for capital purchases only. And it would go into a capital program so that we would have the money to do our capital purchases, would be my idea, if approved by the board.
So we have to look a little bit over the horizon of this budget as well. Assuming we don't get the, hopefully we get the $1 million. Assuming we don't get, what is our total gap in revenue versus expected expenditure?
For this year,
Over 800.
over 800,000.
And next year, there'll be a decrease of about $200 and some odd thousand. But is it still 800,000 or is it going to be closer to $600,000?
Next year would be considerably less than that.
As in numbers?
But we don't have to make for extra payments, so
Next year's projection currently is about $803,500 expense.
There'll be more expense than revenue coming.
Correct.
So it's $800,000 again.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna have to figure out as we go through this budget, what we can spend the following year as well. Keep that in mind.
and hopefully,
$8 million will not pay that other 800,000, maybe 150 or 175,000 that may go towards that, but it's still an $800,000 debt the next year.
right. And I'm looking toward that next budget cycle. I've been told by the county that we would have a new funding system in place prior to the next fiscal year. So
If they all talk to each other.
that is the hopes that it would help us to be able to get to the place.
Yeah, but the funding system, as I understand it from them, is that, we had this with the others, we had this conversation during the county fire review of the budget, is that it's a 7 cents ad valorem tax added to all of us. And then doing away with the fire district fee. Some people would pay more and some people would pay less. And I think the chief publicly announced, used his house as an example, he would actually pay a little less. Not
On my house,
On your house.
but I would have to pay on my vehicles and my lot behind the house and things like that.
Okay.
On my house, I would.
Ah, okay. So that would allegedly, if I understood the numbers correctly, would be revenue neutral. Whatever went away for the fire district fee the first year and the 7% increase in ad valorem tax would be, there would be no new money with that number. Am I correct when I say that?
Well, I don't know. Because, I don't know that we would be able to go into it revenue neutral and last another year with getting the same amount of funding. I mean,
Well, that's my point. When I was talking to one of the county officials about this, they were talking about having it all revenue neutral at that 7 cent mark.
right. And
And so that doesn't help us because we're still at the same number of dollars.
right. So I've talked to county officials and, our tax would have to be 7.7 cents. Here, Castle Beach, get what we're getting from them, would be a 4 cent tax. Because their property values are much higher on the beachfront.
Okay,
But I've been
but it's the same
told,
amount of money.
I've been told that if we go to a tax, they're not going to allow that in one district. So we would have to, Southport's might would come down a little bit, Casville's may would come up some to make everything even in the district. So we might end up with a 6 cent tax,
Okay.
which would benefit us for having Castle Beach.
And we got people playing with numbers out there.
That's exactly right. So there's a lot of variables about the funding that has to be ironed out and worked out. And
Let me verify something. The new structure, I thought you were talking about going, you would be saving because of square footage, and you go to a square footage.
no, the current structure is based on square footage. The new funding mechanism would be based on evaluation.
Okay,
That would be property.
all right.
So when houses are either sold or when they're reassessed, it'd be an automatic increase in the amount of money that come in.
I think it was just the reassessment.
It's just a reassessment, so North Carolina doesn't see sale of the step.
She came close.
All right, so yeah, there's no they don't.
They don't do it based on sale price. Okay.
Now, sale price can get you out of value when you have to speed up your reassessment. So the way the statute is if you come out of balance between value to sale price, then that would trigger an earlier value reassessment. But since the county's on a 4-year cycle, then that would kind of negate that trigger.
Okay.
And property values could go down one day,
That's correct.
and that's on an unstable basis. I think that's where we were as to square footage is stable, property value is unstable.
That is correct. So with all of that being said, I'll close out and take your questions. This payment has hit us hard this year. Again, if you deduct the debt services from this year's budget, there's only about a $100,000 increase in this budget of mine on the fire side. This increase covers any increases in our insurance, our workman's compensation increase, and inflation. If we do not get the grant, my plan is to ask you to front the money from the general fund and allow me to pay the funding back once we change our funding mechanisms. My other option would be, if we don't get the grant, to do a capital fundraising event and project to try to raise the money, which would be very hard. I'll go over each line in the budget if you would like for me to, or entertain your questions that you may have concerning the fire budget.
Let me ask you a question about, what's the rating of our department now?
We're at a 3,
We're at a 3. What's the best you can get? 1?
a 1.
1.
But that does not impact your residential, is that correct, sir?
No, but what it does impact is the rate that people pay for insurance.
On their, yes, on
Yeah, so
commercial.
it's better up here.
On commercial.
But still, if we're not up there, somebody's gonna be paying a whole heck of a lot more for insurance on commercial businesses.
I pay a lot on my commercial business, but I don't want to take that trade-off for my residential home.
No,
I mean, that's the truth of the matter.
But I have the advantage because I know the answer to your question. If you go from on an average building of 10,000 square feet, going from a 3 to a 2 saves that business how much money? About,
Anywhere from $300 to $500 a year on their insurance.
it's not that significant.
But if you go up, it is significant.
If you go to 4.
Yes, if we were to go to a 4 or 5, you would be paying a lot more money on your insurance.
Do we strive to get to a 1?
I don't think that it's really, I really don't think a 1 is attainable. I like to set realistic goals. I think a 2 is attainable where we're at right now currently, because over the last 5 years, we have come up the bar. And I think the preliminary, ISO review that we've done, I think we're close to proceeding to.
So how many other fire departments in Brunswick County are 2?
Leland just became a 2. Either Ocean Isle Beach or Sunset just became a 2. Griswold Longwood became a 2. So I
What
think there's
makes
only
the
3.
difference between a 3 and a 2?
Well, I mean, it's a collective grade, so they grade you on your water system. They grade you on the number of personnel that we have, they grade you on the training hours that our guys put in. They grade you on your apparatus and how many, fire engines and equipment that you put on the scene of a structure fire. They grade us on our 911 system. So there are some things we have no control of, like the 911 system, we have no control of, but I have no control of the water system. So they take all of that and it's an equation that they base all of that on. They base, how many structures we have within 1,000 feet of a fire hydrant. What is the flow of the fire hydrants? How much water can we get out? How much pump capacity do we have? So there's a lot of things that goes into the equation to come up with the ISO rating. Our fire marshal's office pays a big part. How many inspections have they done? How many fire prevention programs have we done? Even our sign in front of the fire station with fire safety messages plays a fact on how many points we get.
Basically, there's very little that we have control of.
So as far as the training hours and the apparatus in order to go from a 3 to a 2, what's the additional cost?
No, I would say that there isn't. We're already doing what we need to do. I mean, we're doing everything we can do to maximize the training hours and we have the equipment right now that's required. You have to have certain equipment on your fire truck to get a 9. We have that. We have had that since we've had fire inspection with the ISO back the first time they done it in the 1970s or
There are
80s.
things you can't control in this determination. Not.
But it's not like we're going out and buying equipment to get a 2. That's
Or
a fallacy.
investing in the infrastructure and making water supply better.
Right. Right.
So you can't do that. So you're just determined by outside factors beyond you.
You know, it's been stated by a public official that we're spending money to try to get the lowest ISO rating in the county. That is not true. That is not factual. And if somebody wants to see that, I can show you that we've not spent money to get a lower ISO rating. That's not, how we're spending money on personnel, yes. Since our last inspection 5 years ago, we've had to add full-time personnel, but we haven't really done that to get an ISO lower score. We've done that because it's been an absolute need, and we have to have people because we don't have the volunteers for the state.
Since this came up in a public, more public setting, the fire station on Long Beach Road.
The one next to the,
Yeah, the old, okay.
Yep. Okay.
We spend approximately $15,000 a year to rent that building.
Yes,
Is that correct?
that is correct.
And the reason why we have that building is,
There, that building was placed, we leased that building for a couple of reasons. One reason, because there were residential and commercial structures in our district that was not within 6 miles of the fire station. That specifically has a lot to do with your insurance rating. We had on the outskirts of our fire district, up 133, Boardwalk Mobile Home Park, the Village Road area, there were houses in that area that had an insurance rating of a 10. Because you have to be within 6 miles of the fire station, and they were right on the border. Well, when we placed that station there in 2010, I believe, or 2011, it dropped their insurance rating from a 10 to where they got what rating we had because they were within 6 miles of the station. So it affected their rating. So that's another thing to do with ISO. It's how many road miles are you from a fire station? That depends on the distribution of road miles, and that goes into the equation of your insurance rating.
and the reason why I asked that question is because there's an official who challenged the city on that. And why they're picking a 15,000, which is really insignificant compared to the whole budget, but they were. And why did we have that? And I'm not sure when that official walked out of the room that they were satisfied with the answer, but the answer seems to be pretty logical as to why we have it.
It also helped us to secure that Long Beach Road corridor, because at that time, 10 years ago, there was some talk going on about annexations, and Oak Island had annexed some properties on Long Beach Road, and we're trying to creep toward the end of Long Beach Road. And if they took that from us, today, and they were able to take that district, it would significantly affect our revenue. 10 years ago, it was $250,000 we could lost. I would dare to say today would probably be $500,000 or more that we would lose.
And are you able to, not today, but are you able to put more structure to that number? Figure out if somebody was to try to reorganize the fire districts, what that would do to reduce our revenue stream?
Yes. Yes.
So if that did happen, you would assume that Castle Beach would go with that.
Not necessarily.
But that could be,
It
that
could be.
I mean, and that would be over $300,000 a year in addition to.
I've heard that Oak Island Fire Department is trying to get the Caswell Beach. Have you heard that?
No big.
I've heard Oak Island doesn't want Castle Beach, so there we go.
Okay, that's a wash. We don't have to worry about it.
I have not heard that. I have not heard that we have any problems with Castle Beach. If we do, I don't know.
And they don't have any problem with us. All right.
Not that I know.
They're a member of that group that oversees the
The
Fire
fire
district.
fee committee.
fire
That's called.
fee committee, yes. They have the opportunity at any time to question anything. They virtually never say anything about it. They just, they're there.
Do we have anything in writing from Duke about the $50,000? Because if I remember correctly, we had some issues last year about getting it, not getting it.
We're supposed to, if they're going to, they verbally said that they were going to discontinue. But I think our
I
contract.
feel like I remember that
I think
conversation.
our contract, if I remember correctly, says that they have to serve us in writing if they're going to discontinue giving us the, donation. And we have not received anything in writing that said that we're not going to get the donation. And, I had our state representatives meet with the officials from Duke, and they think that they kind of smoothed all of that out. We are hoping that we will continue to get that because it is a big benefit to the health
But I remember last year, they kind of got ugly with us. Were not nice to us and called us names and they didn't want to give us.
Well, sure, I don't know, since I'm sitting in the room, I don't want to say that the corporation.
No.
There were individuals.
Yes. Yes.
What were they agreed about?
Life.
Yeah, and we had asked for an increase as well. In the budget.
Or their,
Questions? Do y'all want me to go line by line? You want me to?
The building that we have on Long Beach Road, $15,000, it's really houses a lot of things that doesn't take up space in our main facility. It's not a cheap storage facility, but it's actually cheap.
Actually, it's the best deal that we could find. When I was tasked by the then city manager to find a place over there, because, at that time, we were pushing towards building a permanent substation in the area. Because we had been promised some land, but that fell through twice. And we never got anything in writing both times. But when the city manager tasked me, I looked at several buildings in that location, of course, measured from the buildings to that place that we needed the most. And this was the most economical. We rented it 10 years ago for $1,250 a month. And it's never went up. He has never increased on us. He does all the maintenance to the building, painting, keeping the building up. I think the only thing we do, I think we have volunteers that mow the grass during the summer season, but it's the most economical solution that we have.
So when it comes to that, I'm all for it. But what I'm feeling, I'm gonna say this, no, I'm not politically correct, I'm not smart enough to be eloquent, but it seems like, and I know who you serve, your Lord, I know that, so I'm not misrepresenting this. But as your job is as fire chief, it almost looks like you serve two bosses, and I will say masters, because I know you. But you've got two allegiances. You've got the Southport budget that we help you with sometimes, and then you've got your funding fee out. But that $15,000 is actually meant to save money for people outside the city limits. You're in a catch-22.
Yes.
That's where it all messes up, that we're subsidizing, taking care of insurance rates outside the city. So because you use it for storage and help you save money and don't have to build any more buildings, it makes a lot of sense. But the other reason it sucks.
I prefer to think that instead of storage, you got a piece of equipment stage there. That can respond a heck of a lot quicker as opposed to getting a truck from here to Academy.
but also, that building is now close to city limits. I mean, there are things that are in the city limits that need,
That we didn't have then.
like Southport Crossing.
Correct.
Can you refresh my memory?
That's all.
September 16th. Was anything on Long Beach Road separated from the main firehouse
Separated now.
by water?
Yes,
The dip
So-
on Long Beach Road?
Yes.
So was that firehouse able to respond where the main firehouse could not? I mean, that's.
it helped the response time, yes.
If we could respond, it just took longer. It had to go out in the rain.
Because 211 was completely blocked.
Well, I'm trying to add more value added to the building. I don't know if you dispatch people to sit in that building or not. So
Yeah, we did
if
that
there
first.
was, if that is, because we have the repeated areas that in the big storms completely flood. If that building helps us during emergency situations to respond to areas that, while you may eventually get there, it would be much longer to get there if you weren't in that building. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
We need to act that somewhere, keep that,
Yes, so we have several,
because we didn't have that conversation the other day.
right, and we have several volunteers that live in that corridor area that they respond to that. That is their station that they respond to and roll a truck from. So it does help, yes.
Basically, it's a strategic place that equipment stays, that you can get to places a lot quicker. Save you a lot of time, a lot of effort and time in the case like this, when you guys are responding to something, time is very, very critical.
Yes.
As we go forward, certain people have certain ideas of how they want to reorganize the world. You have to make sure that we keep those kind of things relevant and upfront.
Yes.
One of the things I noticed when I first went to a movie at Surf, right, okay. Was that there was a fire station right close by. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that is the only building that holds a significant number of people at one time in that whole area.
The theater you're talking about.
Yeah, and so any kind of a fire emergency there, how good it is to have fire service right there.
Anything else from anybody? Mr. Manager, do you have any thoughts or comments?
I don't, I think we're moving in the right direction as we assess each department and get us to finalize the budget that we go through the next few months. Is there anything that we want to talk about for rescue? I mean, we talked about a lot of fire. Is there anything for rescue?
That's over 600, almost $700,000 on that.
Yes,
That's the truck.
No, that's not rescue.
I'm backing up on just one thing. When, at what stage, if we approve this budget, will we know whether we're going to get the money from the state or not? The budget seems to be unsure at that level. Is it going to go into August, September?
Last week, the Senate passed their version of the budget. They're on recess this week. So I anticipate next week, the House will come together with their proposal. And then they'll go to conference between the two versions. So if we get anything, it will rather be in the House's version of the budget because it was not in the Senate's. Or then when they conference, it'll come out of the conference committee. So the Senate leader last week said they hope to have it approved by June 30th, which is our fiscal deadline as well. But as you know, in the past, they haven't reached a budget. It's been July, August or so forth. So just depends on what the major differences are and how can they work together to get it accomplished.
It was not in the Senate.
It was not, but there was no local appropriations. So I think normally a lot of those will come in conference, or since we've talked with our House representatives primarily, then it might be in the House as well. So hopefully as we hope that they'll get on it quickly so that as we move into the manager's proposed budget and then the final adoption, hopefully we can then put that into the final version. If not, if the state passes it past our approval, they'll have to come budget amendments to accept those funds after the fiscal year adoption.
This is fine, thank you.
Well,
taking into consideration who we're dealing with, got to find.
Well, ideally, it's approved by June 30th for the start of the fiscal year. And then we can always adjust as we need to our budget. But, you know, if for some reason we adopt it and they haven't adopted theirs, then we'll just have to come back later on and update ours.
So right now on this year's fiscal budget, we are over budget from what we adopted with regards to rescue. So it looks like we adopted a deficit of 515,000 and we're currently at a deficit of 521. Is that correct? It is. Yes, sir.
But we still have some revenue coming in.
We will still collect rescue fees each month through the remainder of the year, so revenues will increase.
For April, May, June, we still have 3 months of revenue coming in.
What's your delay between getting the money?
I think it runs 30 months behind, is that
30
correct?
months?
I mean, 30 days.
We typically collect the previous month.
Yeah, we're collecting like from March, we're collecting, January, and February's payments. I would like to say if we're ready to move on to EMS, that, just to give you a brief, update, this was the first full fiscal year with the paramedic program. Current staffing, we have 3 paramedics, and we have 3 EMTs, that are full-time. And what we've been doing is we've been running a quick response vehicle with a paramedic, and we've been running an ambulance with a full-time EMT and a volunteer that signs up and that we pay a shift stipend. Since this year, we have doubled our revenues with the paramedic program.
That number would be?
Joey will have to pull that. But I looked back, I had Joey pull.
We went from 285 to, looks like, over 3, well, currently over almost 400,000.
I pulled like 2000, 2001, 2022 budgets and looked at our revenues compared to what we brought in this year.
2001.
2020, 2021, 2022 revenues, and looked at what we're bringing in now.
But we didn't have the paramedics back then.
Right. That's right. So it's comparatively to those years, we have doubled in revenue of what we brought in this year.
But we also added expense.
Sure, we did, yeah. So one thing that I can see us doing in this new fiscal year that will cut some costs on EMS is we're going to plan to eliminate the paramedic being in the quick response vehicle and put them on the ambulance with the full-time EMT, because we're still struggling to have volunteers to sign up. Now, when a volunteer does sign up, we will let them replace the EMT on the ambulance, and we'll either move them for training to the fire truck, or we'll either staff a secondary ambulance or quick response vehicle. I think that I'm still looking at the number to see how to see the savings of that, but we're going to save by vehicle expense, having to carry double supplies and drugs. We're going to save on some personnel costs. So that's one thing that we're looking towards, that we've been discussing the last month, of a way we can cut costs and try to stream things a little bit different. So that is one good thing with EMS, that we can
How often have you been redeployed?
redeploy.
Where the county moved you
When the
out.
county moves you out?
I can get you exact numbers, but it's been significantly lower than what it was. We have not been on standby at all. Wow. We have not been on standby since the new contract.
Really?
But knocks on wood right now.
We've not been put on standby since the new contract. We have been dispatched to go to Oak Island, Bowling Springs on some calls.
Those are mutual aid.
Right. But we have not been.
Personnel haven't been
No, we've not been dispatched to go standby, so that is significantly changed.
Well, and that was a big deal for us last year when we were looking at where the standby was gonna be, because
Yes.
having it 211 and 17 doesn't make a whole lot of sense for Southport.
That's correct.
For those at home, would you, explain how we get revenue of having the paramedics?
If the level of call is a higher acuity, then we place a paramedic on there to treat the patient, which that costs more, of course, because you're getting a higher level of service. But not every call requires a paramedic on board. So we always, if the call is not that higher acuity where they need a paramedic, then we just let the EMT basic or the advanced EMT take that call and then come back and keep the paramedic in service to respond to other calls.
How does that turn into revenue?
By billing for the transport. We bill for the transport to the hospital. Which you collect the mileage and you collect any supplies that you use, and then there's a basic transport fee for paramedic level, advanced level, or basic EMT level.
If people have, I'm sorry, Frank, go ahead. If people have insurance, then what you collect is a lot more than somebody that does not have insurance. Now, the problem you have there is you have to beat the breath out of the insurance company to get to the pay, because they don't pay attention very often.
With the expansion of Medicaid into the state,
Or maybe
do
not?
they pay for rescue service? That's what we're looking at.
Yes, we do collect for Medicaid, Medicare.
We do.
Yes.
So people who did not have traditional, like Blue Shield, they're now covered by the state for that benefit. They would be able to, we file for them, do they file for them? How does that work? I mean, I'm not sure that I could file that paperwork for it, so.
Yeah, we have a third-party billing company that does all of our billing for us. We're going through a huge Medicare audit, Medicaid audit type system now, where we're having to refile paperwork. It's been taking a lot of Captain McDaniel's time. She's been working on it for over a month to recertify so that we can collect those payments.
I was gonna ask you, didn't we have an issue with collections, 3 years ago or so?
Yes,
Yeah, we got that resolved.
yes, ma'am. We went to a new billing company too. They've been doing very, very good at their collection rate. Just a couple of things that I do want to throw out. There is a House bill in right now that could cost us a lot of money. They're trying to require that anyone in the state of North Carolina that has a medical certification, medical responder, EMT, basic, advanced EMT, or paramedic, they're trying to force any North Carolinian that has those to become a national registry with the whole United States system, which would make all of our people have to take national registry test and keep their certifications at a higher level with training. So some of the Office of Emergency Management System coordinators and people of the county are highly against this House bill because it's not going to do anything but cost us extra funding.
I'm assuming that the reason for the bill, is there some question about the standards? And is it just not North Carolina standards? Are they doing this across the country to make sure that each state has the same standard of care if you got that title?
I'm not really sure what the premise is behind the bill because I haven't studied it a lot. I'm just hearing about it in the last week or so. So another bill it's a federal regulation bill that's been going on, and it does look like that it's going to pass. Is they're putting in some new OSHA standards for fire departments that will drastically change some things for us as well.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And go ahead, no. Okay.
So that is in reference to turnout gear and how many extra air tanks and all of that stuff?
Yes.
I
And
just can't imagine if they think that's gonna happen overnight. Like, what are we gonna do to you?
it's gonna shut down every volunteer department, is what's gonna happen. Because they're not gonna be able to afford to do it at all.
And
It's
so
gonna
they,
be- it's
so
gonna
they
be a
can't, so they
requirement.
literally can't do that.
It's gonna be a requirement on volunteers, on combination departments and just full-time departments too.
And that's at the national.
It's talking about medical monitoring. Anytime we're on the scene, that we have to have so many medical personnel there to monitor. I mean, it's gonna be, it's
Really,
really,
do you have a safety officer now? House
I
protocol?
mean, if our safety officers do not show up on the scene, we designate someone as a safety officer.
But you have that position.
Yes.
What does that mean? It's a safety officer.
Well, it's just an individual that's designated just to watch the scene, to make sure that everyone has their turnout gear on, everyone is following the rehab policy, that there's no hazards immediately.
If you're in those suits and you're sweating at the door on a hot summer day, and you look in their eyes, you can see that they need to come off and sit down. And that they leave it to the individual firemen. They may not choose to do that because they want to be in the fight.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to yank them off the line and put them down. Is that fair, gentlemen?
Yes.
But not like.
They're not.
Would we learn that at the fire academy?
Yes, ma'am. Your application will start May 1st.
So we have a over $1.5 million deficit between the two. And we're only looking at maybe $1 million to make that up. Is there any other, there's really no other option, right? Like you've got all of that out of this.
Yes, and the only thing that I can suggest, we're going to cut some, I've got to get with Joey and we've got to discuss about taking the QRV and the paramedic, put them on the ambulance and see what that's going to cut. That's just developed over the last week or so that we decided to move in that direction. So that's going to reduce some of the deficit in the EMS budget. And the only other thing that I can ask Chief Treadway to look at is just to see if the county has increased their fees for transport and things like that, so that we can see if we need to go up on ours. That would help some.
Last night at the county commissioner meeting, at the end of the meeting, they went over the House and Senate bills that would be affecting the county as a whole. One of them they mentioned is about the new radio system that was required to be put in place, that was originally supposed to be at no cost. That looks like they're gonna add potentially a fee to each radio. We're not talking about for Southport as a whole, we're talking about every single radio that every single firefighter, EMS, or police officer has on them at any
Who are
given
we
time.
paying the fee to?
It was very unclear, and even at the county commissioner meeting last night, they were talking about this. The county commissioners are planning to write a letter to our state representatives about their concerns about this. But I did want to bring that up here in our meeting as well, because they did ask in that meeting for that letter to also go to all fire chiefs in the county.
It would probably be to the state because the state owns the system.
Well, the state is the ones who changed the frequency level that made us buy all the brand new radios. They didn't give everybody, they gave us money, but they didn't give everybody else money.
We didn't get 600,000.
Oh, that's right, we didn't get.
We didn't get it. We asked for it. We didn't get it.
So,
I asked for it 2 years in a row.
So I did want to bring that up because that's potentially another cost coming at us. That was supposed to be at no cost going forward. And then once that trend starts, if it's only $15 per radio this year, they're used to say it's not $25 per radio next year and increasing.
So you're talking an actual subscription of like
Yes,
ongoing,
yes.
oh, that's,
I can't, I don't understand the logic, by the law, I don't understand the logic, but I don't understand the logic of, it's one thing when you're dealing with a municipality taxing issue, but when you're dealing with I'm gonna use Bowling Springs, C3 one, where are they gonna get that all this money from? Where they can.
Or are they using that money to replace the equipment as it, I mean, that would be my question, because if that's a,
But that's piggyback, yeah.
if that's a maintenance thing, or if,
But they required the change to the new radios. At the time that they required the change, it was said that there would be no additional cost to that. And then they're flipping the script on us. Oh, we've got all these new radios. Now we're gonna charge you for them on top of it. So we spent 600,000 on these radios in the last year. And they're potentially going to add additional fees, and I'm not sure if it's monthly, yearly, I'm not sure what that looks like. It was a little bit, confusing when they were going over it, and the gentleman who was explaining it was admittedly confused. The county commissioners were admittedly confused. So it was just something to notice when we're going through all of this stuff also.
And we spent 600,000 for fire and events, that doesn't include what we spent for police. So it was close to $1 million is what we spent last year for radios, including police.
You don't pay the fee, what are they gonna do, cut off the radio?
Am I?
That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, not this lifetime.
1984.
People would die.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Chief, I appreciate your budget, and it's a 30, and this doesn't have anything to do with the actual numbers, but it has to do with the tax rate and that sort of thing. Last year, we subsidized the general fund, the budget by, was it?
60.
Yes, you got fire and rescue?
No, not his budget, I'm talking about the whole budget. Was it 1.2 or was that the 600 and some? I can't remember the figure that we, from the general fund, that we subsidized on.
Yeah, it's about $600,000, I think.
So 640,000. So, yeah, so that was last year, and, basically, the fire budget is, 4 tax cents more. So as we're looking at this and these increases, and we think we're not going to raise taxes, and if we're going to continue to claw money out of our reserve to pay annual bills, which is wrong way to do this. We need to understand the EMS budget is just based on the difference of that is another penny higher this year. So I just think we need to keep in mind that when we're looking at tax rates, this is a lot. If you combine fire and EMS, just overall what it is, it's about 30%, almost 30% of our ad valorem tax this year. Those amounts coming out of the general fund. So anyway, I think I just want us talking about taxes and what it's going to take, because we have to plan to pay it. We can't plan for a grant. So that's all I've got.
No, I think you well said. It's just we're stuck.
So be sure I understand, you are pointing out that the solution is either to take money out of the general fund or raise taxes. Am I correct on that? But we gotta pay the bill. The chief has presented a legit bill. And he's still working what he can do to this, but in general, this is what it's gonna be. And there's not gonna be a big change, so we're either gonna claw out a lot more of general fund whiling away when that money should be spent on capital improvements that are long-range improvements. Because if we keep pulling money out of the general fund every year to pay our bills, our annual bills, we will reach the point, just like when we see the electric fund, where it is commendable to the point that that's not, and you're gonna have to have a 15-cent tax increase. You're gonna have to do something crazy to replace a couple $1 million that you're clawing out of the general fund. So that, for me, I think we tried last year to talk about needing to do tax increases and incremental tax increases, but have a bigger one last year. So here we are now. And then this is full 4 cents more just for fire. That's all legitimate. So,
So as we get into next steps to a manager's budget,
right,
finance has been working on showing us a penny graph about where the departments are for a penny of the total tax rate compared to what revenues bring in. So right now, the model shows that fire takes about 2.79 cent. Rescue is 2.01 cent out of the entire tax rate of 31 cent. So certainly as we go forward, just show these numbers and see, what our revenues versus expenses are.
yeah, I looked at it based on this, the
Right.
proposed
Right.
revenue.
Karen, just you gotta also remember there's other sources of revenue other than.
Oh, I know that. but I'm just talking about,
So a piece of this, of the sales taxes would pay for part of the fire and rescue as well. I mean, if you.
no, I hear all that, but we've got all of our departments are gonna be more.
Right.
So I just want us to be, when we're talking about pennies and tax rate and all that, I want us to be real aware.
So our EMS was going to cost us $680,000 for fiscal year 26. Did I read that correct?
Right, yeah.
I'm going to bring up the elephant in the room like I did last year. Do we really want to have EMS service in Southport? The county provides EMS service. We already pay for it at the county level. I understand that we want to have a faster response rate. I understand that it's great to have that here, but we are taxing our citizens. They're double paying for something that the county is supposed to provide already. And we are providing an additional service at a much higher cost. So we need to make sure that our citizens want that additional service because it does come at a significant additional cost.
What is the follow-up? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you're absolutely right. That is 4 cents. Tax, if we're looking at ad valorem fairness, but looking at that, that's 4 cents of what they're paying. And they need, and I agree with you, citizens, I've always heard citizens want it. So that is what but we do need to quantify because you want parks, you want this, it all comes at a cost.
When they come to us and they go, oh, well, we look to you to make sure that we're not overspending and we're being fiscally responsible. And the flip side of that is they also want all of the services. So we have to walk the line and figure out what services do they really want and at what cost, because none of this is free.
But most people don't want this service until they need this service. I mean, that's the reality.
Yeah.
And so, it's like life insurance. Well, I mean, you and I aren't thinking about life insurance, but maybe Low Davis is.
We've got the life insurance.
But, well, I do have life insurance, but I'm just saying, I'm hoping I don't benefit from it anytime soon. So you won't. Either way, right? So, but this is life insurance.
Let's look at it this way. Your point is very well taken. Now, in 2016, if they hadn't had a very, very rapid response, this old boy here would be sitting over in Oakdale and Wilmington under the daisies. And that would.
But now if we conceptualize.
I went to see my primary care physician not that long ago, and she said, you're damn lucky to be here, don't you?
Well, if you live in Southport on Lane, you were buried at Northwood, at least the city would cut the grass. They not respond in the ambulance, but they'll cut the grass at the cemetery. So it's all about priority. It's all about priority.
And Chief, this is not about you, I promise, that is not a personal thing. This is me just trying to bring up the fact that our citizens need to understand that they are already paying for service at the county level. We are choosing to pay for it at the city level for faster response times, for making sure that our citizens are as safe as they can be. And we went through and you did a great job negotiating with the county this past year about where we would even go for standby to make sure that we were closer to our citizens, because being, as I mentioned, out at 211 and 17 is unacceptable for our response time, because if we are carrying the additional burden of this cost and I say we are the citizens of Southport, then we need to make sure that we have those response times. And I'm thankful that you were able to negotiate the closer standby places, because without that piece last year, as you knew, I was up in arms about it, and that made it a much easier piece to swallow.
You know, one way you can look at this is, do you want a Fiat or do you want a Ferrari? Get from point A to point B. Now,
It seems to me that the assumption is that if we had the county take over EMS, that the response time would drop significantly. But would, in fact, they relocate? I mean, if they're still where they are, wouldn't the response time be the same?
Because here's a question that we talked about last year. Fortunately, we didn't engage the county fully on this. You know, they opened the window about this. Why? Are those 2,000 plus calls that you take? If we weren't here, they would have to take them. So why should they be paying us stipend? Because we're offering their citizens, yes, their citizens this opportunity for fast response, and takes the burden off of their backs for the 3 stations that are near us that are often out of service because they got enough calls just for those 3 stations. I hope that statement is factually correct. So it's too late for this year, because they're already in their budget cycle. But we need to look at whether or not how we engage this county manager and try and figure out what they can provide us in a supplement to us, because we are doing their work. And we have to figure out how we're going to do that.
I would imagine strings come with that.
Well, no, well, the strings is already, they got 2,000 calls off their back. There should be no strings on it. We're doing, if we weren't here, they would have to, and a lot of those calls, fair number of those calls, I don't know what the percentage is I fell down, I can't get back up calls. So that's what they are. I mean, they are. So other jurisdictions, other fire departments have said, we're not running these calls anymore. The county has to run those calls. I'm not suggesting we do that, because our citizens who do fall down, they want us to pick them back up, okay? But we have to figure out, how do we get a balance here where we get some more money out of the county for offload, because they offloaded. We took on the 2,000 calls.
Well, 75% of the district is outside the city limits. 75% of the district.
That is
I
the
keep saying that.
fire.
Keep saying that. How
That's
many
the
times?
fire district. So what with your ambulance, the EMT service, the threshold, how far will you go in that ambulance on a call?
Well, it mirrors the fire district.
Right, so it tries to copy a district that doesn't get paid for. And the animal in this game is that if you've got a business, if you've got a ambulance service, you pretty much gotta be a hustler like you are. You work all day, every day, every call. It's basically like a district or a monopoly almost that you've got to service. You've got to get those extra money to be able to afford to have.
There's another bill at the state level right now about the ability for ambulances to come in that are not required to be part of the franchise
Free
agreement.
agents.
Yes, so that is at the state level right now as well, that they would allow free agent ambulances to come.
So we would cripple you if we bridled you, if we held you back and said, don't go out the city limits. You would cripple your revenue because you couldn't afford unless you serviced the outside. That's what the EMT, that's what we're stuck with, is you have to survive. There is no other way. If we bridle you back and just service Southport, we could not afford it.
Right, because it would significantly decrease your revenue. So instead of it being 4% on the tax, like Alderman Monstill brought up, the deficit, it would probably be 6 or 7 cents.
Yes, sir. And so we have to, if we keep it, we have to keep servicing as much as we can get.
Here's, this is going way out. Has anybody ever done a study as to the number of runs you make in an aging community like Southport versus one where the average age of the people is less? As you get older, you're gonna have more things that's gonna go wrong. It would be interesting to see how many more calls you're having as the population ages.
With the development that we have proposed right now, I mean, I'm looking for EMS calls to double once it's built up. I mean, because that,
Well, that, so, my argument that you have to, one of the goals, working with the county to figure out how much are they willing to pay, because they no longer have to know what they cost to support this as a partnership, not as a competition, not a punishment, not as anything else. We're in partnership with them because they hold full our license as well, so they're getting a great benefit from us.
As it relates to the two budgets, 25% of the fire district is making up $1.5 million of deficit with the additional 75% of the fire district.
Say that again. Let's,
Let me think about it.
that goes into the newspaper.
Oh, God, no.
Yes, I mean, that's a very telling statistic.
Kind
It
word, Bob.
explains a lot.
So, yeah, 25% of the fire district is making up $1.5 million deficit to the additional 75%.
That is a telling figure.
I mean, I'm all for, fire and EMS, I mean, just is what it is. We certainly would love to find alternative streams of income for it, but that's outside of our control. So,
That is one of the government services that I think government is supposed to provide, public safety
I was talking
and secure
to
borders.
some fire chiefs, over the last week. So, and this could be wrong information, and Noah, you could look into this, but they were telling me that a municipality has a way of doing a prepared meals tax. As long as it's 1/4%, you don't have to go to the state legislatures. That you can do it on your own. If it's 1 cent, you have to go, but if it's smaller than 1 cent, that there were some towns that have done that, and they have used that for emergency services. So I don't know if our city manager maybe could look into that to see if that is
What do
factual
we think
information.
what do we think the least cent will generate? Have an idea, did we get a number?
Well, no, because we don't get a breakdown of sales tax because the way the state formulates it. So, I mean, we could take 1% of our revenue, but that's going to be everything, not just meals.
Correct, okay, gotcha.
But if that is factual information, that could be a revenue stream for fire and EMS to try to look into that could help us capture some of the money that's coming from tourism and people coming in here. It's just an idea. I don't know because I could look into it. I was just gathering information that they were putting out. Because when they mentioned it, I said, well, it has to go to the state legislators. And I said, they said that they're not going to do that. And they said, well, if it's below the threshold of 1 cent, a local authority can enact that.
So it could be 1/2 cent.
0.9.
it's going to be 0.99.
And like I said, I'm not sure. I just think that that's some good information that.
Needs to be
Yeah.
researched, but
Oh, you want it?
yeah, find that out. I think we should do that ASAP.
I know that Onslow County does have, some percent of tax on meals. and they use that through their whole county to supplement, capital purchases for fire departments.
All right,
That's something that Onslow County will do. Another county is doing the meals tax, and they're supplementing for personnel. It was written in the legislation that goes for personnel operations. So,
This is not something we're just, other people are already doing it.
right, these are things that came out of the
General
meeting.
funds, we can decide where it needs to go.
it's not just a meals tax, it's a beverage tax.
Right, meals and beverage, that's correct.
I bet that takes it a lot.
That's your fee in the market.
Yeah.
And also, another question that I had with the funding, if the funding mechanism changes and we end up with in our local area, 7 cents for fire services, if we could tag onto that for our EMS service. That is a question that I have. You know, I understand the local authority can do a 10-cent tax without being a referendum, a special service tax. And if we needed 7 cents for fire, could we add a cent or two for EMS services to help with offset costs? I don't know that that's possible, but I'm looking at all options for funding to try to get ideas. And believe me, we shake boots every time we get a chance to shake a boot and sell a plate. We're trying. We really are.
Any other questions of the chief?
Yeah, when are you gonna have another catfish?
Well, we were going to have one this Friday, but we've had to cancel that due to Chief Scott's passing. So it's just gonna put too much strain on the department, so we're gonna try to reschedule that for the month of May.
Good.
Before we adjourn, I think the manager want to talk to us about a date.
So currently, our next budget meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday for Public Works and Energy. Alderman Spencer has requested, he's going to be out of town starting Tuesday for the City Vision Conference. So if everybody is available Monday, the day before we regularly have that scheduled. Monday morning, same time, 9 o'clock next Monday instead of Tuesday.
Monday.
What?
I said it's orthodontist appointment, or what do you want to know?
I can do Monday.
That's been scheduled for a long
Which
time.
budget is that?
Public Works and Energy. So we could do Friday, the 25th. Because the conference is Tuesday, and it's good Thursday.
We put that mid-afternoon.
This Friday?
Or May.
Next Friday.
Keep going.
Next Friday would
It's the
be
second.
May the 2nd.
I'm sorry, Mark, what did you
Go
say?
ahead and do Tuesday, and I'll just watch it.
Okay. It's on the base, we're going to stay with
If
Tuesday.
it's just me, y'all do it for me.
Planning board got a special meeting 10 on the second. Then that day's a disaster for me.
Just stay with your schedule, if everybody's with.
Thank you.
So.
We've got one.
Anything else for the manager or for the chief before we adjourn?
Thank you, Chief.
All in, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? And all in favor, say aye. Opposed, unanimous.
Everybody's got it.